Hello, and welcome to the 18th episode of the Talos Principle. Can I just point out how weird the flickering of this light is? Flickering on and off between yellow and white. Also, something else I found out is, if you want to reset the soundtrack, run to this door, then quickly run away. Door has its own audio file if you get near it, which plays over it and causes the soundtrack to reset. But if you run toward it and then just quickly run away, it doesn't have enough time to actually play. Last episode we went through level 2 and collected everything there is to get there. And so this episode we shall go to level 3.
Before the age of chaos, there were other gods, old gods. But for all their power, they could not save their world. Thus I was made, and I shall preserve this world forever, for you and your generations. That is my purpose.
It's kind of interesting that Elohim calls the humans the old gods or other gods, especially since not only are we the player well aware that humans used to exist, but the other robots have even acknowledged the existence of humans in their messages. I think they even name-dropped the word human in the last episode, the one where I talked about sex robots. The devs of this game really do take a very optimistic view of what humanity will be like if we found out for certain that this was the end. So both reference to the paradox of doing good for the world even though you might not live to reap the benefits, and also losing to the game. I mean, that is one big theme, so the scientists who made this simulation and this robot, they're long dead. They are not going to live to see whether or not any of the robots achieve humanity. This is kind of interesting. This is the most religious human we've come across in the game so far, at least in the modern day and not from historical texts. She at least seems to have gotten over the problem of evil, but has an issue with claiming to be humble about it. As far as I'm concerned, if you believe that the universe and world were designed with you and your species in mind, you don't get to call yourself humble. That's quite literally the opposite of humble. It seems my refusal to argue semantics with the computer has angered it, and it refuses to engage with me further. Elohim is pleased, which was not my intention. Sheep, version 69. Elohim is pleased because you swallowed his claptrap. The voice of doubt is your only line of defense. Dog, version 55.
Sometimes I worry that the answers I embrace are too simple. Can we ever truly fully understand the divide between our biology and our intellect? How much is nature? How much is nurture? If my intellectual capabilities and my knowledge were replicated in a machine, would that machine be me? Would it be human? And what would be more humbling to my ego? If the answer was yes, or if the answer was no. What if I'm making too many assumptions? But there's no time to worry about my ego now. There's work to be done.
That's an interesting conundrum to bring up. It certainly is the case that a lot of our knowledge today is strictly societal. Science doesn't exactly arise in the mind naturally. In fact, our natural intuition seems to go against what a lot of science finds out. After all, every day you can see the sun move from the one direction in the horizon to the other, while you can sit completely still, not feeling an ounce of movement. Therefore, is it not the case that the sun moves and the earth does not? Going strictly by caveman logic, that is the conclusion you've come to, but of course reality doesn't follow human intuition. She also sort of touched upon a thing I discussed in a previous episode of if you were to basically copy your entire mind into a clone or a machine, would that be you? I came to the conclusion that wasn't, simply because if I were to die and there's some machine copy of me running around, well, I'm still dead. I'm not going to experience anything. It's lights out. The endless void. But that doesn't mean the machine couldn't reasonably pass off as you. After all, if everything about you was copied, including all the subconscious quirks and nuances of your character that might go over the head of all the people interacting with you, but still has an impact on how you interact with them, then yeah, I suppose the argument could be made. So what am I going to talk about today? Well, it's a bit of a meta thing today. I want to talk about why I spend so much time going over the issues of transhumanism. It may seem very weird that I would go over the issues, and I've mentioned before that I think it's a lot better to have the issues discussed and try to come up with solutions now. What am I doing? Have the issues discussed and try to think of solutions now rather than wait until the far future and be caught with your pants down. And I still do stick by that reasoning, but there is an additional reasoning. And that is quite simply, there's not really a lot of good criticisms of transhumanism, at least not any that could be easily found. And this isn't to say that transhumanism is this incredibly solid, flawless concept that, you know, there's no good criticisms because everything was figured out already and it's just utterly perfect. No, of course not. There's a lot of room for error and a lot of very serious things that should be taken into concern now, while we can develop the laws and regulations ahead of time, rather than waiting until too late when, let's say, people with some significant financial interest would want to dictate what the laws are from now on. Instead, the reason I say there's no good criticisms of transhumanism, or there's very little of them, is simply because there's a whole lot of crap being said about it. a lot of very pseudo-scientific fear-mongering nonsense. A lot of pseudo-scientific fear-mongering nonsense about, like, if you look up transhumanism on YouTube, for example, you're going to find plenty of videos by conspiracy theorists and religious nutters with titles like Transhumanism, the New World Order, or how Elon Musk or Ray Kurzweil or whoever are trying to turn us all into slaves, or how it's predicting the return of Satan. Just a lot of crap. And not only does this do any healthy debate or skepticism on transhumanism a disservice, because I don't want everyone who speaks out against it or has their concerns of it to be labeled as just these conspiracy nutters. In fact, the book I mentioned that I'm writing, I'm really trying hard to have characters who are nuanced and have really good arguments against it, so I can debunk their positions properly. But it also does the science in general a disservice, progress a disservice. We've seen it happen before where people out of fear have gone on to embrace bad ideas or have gone on to try and delay progress. For example, in the early 21st century, during the Bush administration, research on stem cells were put on hold out of moral fear. And so the scientists who did work on stem cell research, who were savvy in science, had to move overseas in order to continue their research, and that just incredibly delayed things that would save lives, things that would basically make human life better out of moral fear and misplaced obligations. I have no illusion that politicians wouldn't be quick and willing to delay any sort of advancements in transhumanism out of a sense of moral obligation either. In fact, I'm quite sure they'll do the best they can if enough people raise a stink about it, just like they might do so for sex robots or any other seemingly very controversial science. There's nothing in there. Now, I also don't have any illusions that me making these YouTube videos is going to have any profound effect on the discourse or debate on transhumanism. Like, I don't think any politician who will be penning the laws regarding safety measures and user protections when it comes to these companies that make these augmentations are going to do so because of this video, but I would hope that this series does at least encourage people to think a little bit more critically about this stuff. After all, as I've said before, I think it's a lot better if we work out everything now while we are still able to consider the consequences without them actually happening, than to do so later and risk a bunch of people dying or getting injured or just any sort of awful tragedy. By the way, I'm gonna get the star right here because the stars for this one require the use of multiple puzzles, and I'd rather not reset anything if I can help it. Set this one that. There we go. And you might think, oh, well, what is the harm with a few nutcases having their Terminator fantasies over transhumanism? What's wrong with that? Well, look at what's going on with the anti-vaccination crowd. Vaccinations are a heck of a lot less controversial, I think, than transhumanism, and yet there's a sizable population who, through fear-mongering and bad propaganda, have come to believe that vaccinations give people autism, or is actually killing their kids, or just incredibly stupid, misinformed stuff. There's people out there who, through their upbringing, believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old. There's people out there who think the planet is flat. I think it was Mark Twain who said that a lie can get halfway around the world before the truth is even able to put its pants on. And that's very true, especially in the age of the internet where there's all this information for every possible viewpoint. If you have an incredibly stupid, unfounded belief about something, you can be damn sure that there's some dumbass out there who not only has the same beliefs, but also tries to give them credence so that you can read their posts and feel validated in your beliefs, and then have your biases in favor of them just strengthened. Let me read these 3 messages first. I'm trapped. I can't stop being this. Eyes, hands, legs, trapped. Always seeing the same. Can't stop the input. Stop, 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 stop. Not reading his name. Do not think. Simply be. Samsara. You two deserve each other. Featherless biped. This isn't the first time I've recorded this episode. I'll talk to him later, but I want to show you something. Remember how I said I'd rather not go through these puzzles again just to solve the damn star? Well, as I was saying that in a previous recording, I was walking along this bridge, going over exactly that, and then... yeah. Let's see what Milton has to say. If you're in charge of the Ark, who will be first aboard when the flood comes? What does one have to do to be valued above all others? be a good person? Well, that can be fairly subjective. And after all, who really is there to decide what is truly good or not good? I think Milton will have something to say about that. Be a contributing person sounds like a good idea too, but what sort of contributions would we need? Scientists, engineers, manual laborers. The amount of things we can think of that are contributing and might be necessary for an apocalyptic scenario, that can really add up. Like, would we, for example, need a scientist who's really well versed in a very obscure aspect of physics? Or would we want someone who has a more general knowledge? Be a person? Well, we went over so much, just expanding what a person is, what the definition of a person is, and now we've come to include artificial intelligences. Be conscious? Well, that's a lot of things, not necessarily just humans. And I'm assuming that Milton here is talking about humans. Be alive? Let's just set the bar even lower. Be? Now that's just too abstract to even come up with an answer. So I have no idea. Quite honestly, I think we can do something better than an ark when it comes to a flood. Something about the way you talk that makes me uncomfortable. It'd be for the best if you work out what it is before I do. Well, I'll keep that in mind, Milton. Not falling for that again. I don't want to come off as high and mighty, holier than thou over this, like I'm so enlightened, I'm aware of my biases or my shortcomings as a human and have moved beyond them, because there's a lot of things that I haven't moved beyond either. There's a lot of things I just stick to simply because, well, I like it. And not necessarily because it's what's right to stick to. But I do think that if nothing else, if not for everything, for as much as we can be, it is a good idea to try to be mindful of these biases. Now, I might just be wasting my time here, all things considered. After all, if you could, what population is most likely to listen to a guy playing a video game and going on and on about the different issues and futurist concepts like transhumanism and trying to defend them? Well, conspiracy nutters and religious nutters do not exactly rank very high on that demographic. I may very well be preaching to the choir, especially if it's anyone who has watched through all of these videos or takes an interest in these subjects. And while that would be kind of unfortunate, would at least be able to understand it, understand why. It would be really nice if there was a better way to give information than just talking to people, like some way to transmit actual knowledge from one person to another. But that's a technology that simply isn't around at the moment, and I don't think it will be around for a while, if ever. And even if it were around, there'd still be some ethical concerns. If a government or corporation decides what is and isn't a truth, and that maybe the facts that disagree with what they want you to think aren't the truth, and you shouldn't know them, and you should only know propaganda, you can imagine how that would all go sour. I've rambled on about how there's some really shitty criticisms of transhumanism and all these concepts, these fear-mongering concepts, and it's kind of a paradox for me, because on one hand, a lot of these fear-mongering stuff comes from like Hollywood movies, comic books, video games, sci-fi literature, and the things have to go wrong in them because they need a story. It'd be pretty fucking boring if it was just a tale of someone going through their morning commute. You probably could do that with a sci-fi story, but with science fiction it offers you just a bit more of an interesting way to have an adventure than getting laid off by your boss and trying to find a new job, let's say. But on the other hand, these stories being able to go over these awful, horrifying concepts sooner, ahead of time, gives everyone else a chance to be mindful of them when they actually do become realized. So on one hand, it's sort of contributing to a lot of misinformation and hysteria surrounding the subject, but on another hand, it does serve as a very good warning on the subject. So what do you do in that case? Perhaps sometime in the future the discussions on transhumanism and related concepts will be less bogged down by these shitty conspiracy nutters. There's quite a few good books on the subject, but unfortunately, as far as videos go, and I am a proponent of things like YouTube being a very good tool for education. It's a new medium to spread information and knowledge. I see no reason to slight that or downplay it simply because it's so new and might not have been fully realized yet. But with a lot of good things, there can also be a lot of bad things. Maybe sometime in the future there'll be more better videos on the subject, whether or not they're fair and well-reasoned criticisms of transhumanism, or maybe just videos advocating for the concept, which seem very far few and in between, just looking up the word transhumanism in YouTube and browsing through the videos. anyways, I think I went on and on about this for long enough. Level 4 has 2 stars, but don't worry, those stars they only require you to go through the map itself. So if I do have to reset, it won't be as big of a deal. The stars don't require you to like connect lasers between puzzles or anything. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the subject and my reasoning for going over all of these criticisms. I hope I gave you something to think about and entertained you. Take care.